and welcome to the Audit and Risk Management Committee of the 22nd of October. Can I pay a particular welcome to our new governance, he said, solicitor, he said, frantically looking for the piece of paper it's Lucy Irons-Young, who's joined the council and will be hopefully, sooner rather than later, our governance solicitor. Welcome, Lucy, and I would hope that you'll find the business of the committee interesting, not to say edifying. But that's the first point. The second point, I would like to take the opportunity before we start the business today to pay tribute to Jill Dykes and indeed Jack Groom as Vice Chair for their stewardship of this committee over the past 16 months. Have been having various meetings, Vice Chair and I, with Mr. Haswell and his staff, and I would like to, take the opportunity as soon as diaries and circumstances permit to get the benefit of your views and your advice as to how you feel that we should be sort of taking the committee forward. But in the meantime, thank you, and also to Councillor Groom for your stewardship over that period of time. Thank you.
Do you mind if I just reply? I would just like to say thank you for those comments. I'd be more than happy to speak out with committee too. I think the committee has moved forward in the last 16 months, and that is not just down to my chairmanship in any shape or form. It's down to the members who were on that committee who supported the direction and the moving forward, and I would just like to see that continue. So it wasn't me and me alone, it was the whole committee who actually moved the committee forward. So thank you, though.
That's good of you to say so, and I'm sure that we can count on your full contribution and input, to taking the committee forward and for the remainder of this council. Okay, right. Sederunt and Apologies, Claire, please.
Chairman, Councillors Collins, Scobie and Stitt aren't present. Presume they're all apologies. There are 8 members present this morning.
My understanding is that Councillor Scobie's on holiday, or at least he said that in a recent email. So on that basis, I think I'll be presumptuous and suggest that we intimate an apology for absence on his behalf. We'll not necessarily be thanking for it, of course, but never mind. Aye. Item number 2, then, declarations of interest. Has anyone any declarations of interest to make? No? Okay, thank you. Item number 3, the minutes of the meeting on the 24th of September. They're for approval. Can someone, can you confirm that they are a correct record, or otherwise? I wasn't here. I'll not say any more than that. Councillor Witts? Oh, okay, right. So they are approved on that basis. Item number 4 is the next item on the agenda. It's the external audit report. It's a follow-up report to Scotland's public finances. It's a report by Mr. Haswell in his capacity as Director of Chief Executive Service. I'll try to contextualise it briefly, if I may. Council's external auditors have recently published a report as part of their work for 2012-13. This is the follow-up to the Audit Scotland study, Scotland's Public Finances Addressing the Challenges, which was published in August of 2011. The original study highlighted the key risks and issues that the public sector needed to consider in responding to the challenges of reducing budgets and delivering sustainable public services. The external audit report, which is the appendix to this report, considers how well Dumfries and Galloway has prepared for and is responding to these challenges. Unfortunately, we don't have any representatives from PricewaterhouseCoopers here today, but the new engagement leader for external audit, Lindsay Patterson, who is due to be here today, has sadly suffered a family bereavement, which has meant that she's not been able to attend, but she would be keen to come along, as it were, as soon as circumstances permit, and Mr. Geraghty is currently in contact, and we'll get the arrangements made for that to take place. If there are any questions for PricewaterhouseCoopers, or PwC, I'll shorten it to, then our officers will pass these on after the committee meeting, and will ensure that PwC are prepared to answer these in December, when Lindsay and Tony Livingston will be in attendance at the meeting, as is proposed. On that basis, Mr. Haswell, you're presenting.
Chairman, I've really nothing to add to the report. Chairman, I'm quite happy, as you say, to take questions away, or indeed if Kevin and I can answer them, we'd endeavour to answer them today.
You have nothing to add at this stage, Kevin? No, thank you. Colleagues, Councillor McKee?
Aye, Chair, I don't know where they're kind of linked with what you've got here, plus the debt control and social work services. Now, what or how much consideration is given to the debt that is outstanding to social work, which will be recovered in due time? Is that recorded in any financial papers? Because given there's about a £1.5 million debt recovery required within social work, which will come through time. As you know, when people are in care, if they've got a house of their own, that can be taken as part of their payment, and that's debt comes under debt recovery. Now, given the difficult situation within the social work,
Councillor McKee, can I interject there for a moment, please? It would be helpful to colleagues and myself if you could give us, the indication of which paragraphs in the report you're talking about.
Well, given what's in here, and what's in the social work papers, what I'm questioning is, with debt recovery, is debt recovery taken into consideration in the budget, or a one-year budget, or where is that debt? When does that come into the budget if it's not considered at the time of budget setting? Because given that there's a £1.5 million debt recovery, it's got to come through time, and there's a supposed overspend of 200,000, that supposed overspend may be covered by debt recovery. Where is that taken into consideration, if it is?
Kevin, before, I think the Vice Chair wanted to comment before I bring you in, if that's an order, please.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. Look, I think when you look at this actual report, it's looking at the whole sort of budgetary process and the the assessment that members actually do within the different committees and things like that. I think it would be more appropriate if that question was asked when we get to the internal reports on the social work services, and maybe what action they were taking forward to help that situation. I'm not saying don't ask the question. What I'm saying is, can we leave that till the internal report?
But my point is, if there's that amount of outstanding debt, when is it taken? Is it taken into consideration at all?
Kevin, would you like to respond now, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I think some of the thrust of what you're saying will come up again in relation to the internal audit report. But answering the broader question, which is where does it occur? Debt is a balance sheet item. It's an asset of the council, so it's really pertinent to the annual accounts of the council. In terms of budget, income budgets are set for services, so they, on the basis of expected receipt and delivery of services and charges and that sort of stuff. Where a debt account is issued, a debtor's account, an ordinary debtor's account, a credit is given to the service at the time, and the debt sits on the balance sheet. It's a balance sheet item. If we fail to recover debt, it does become an accounting issue, and it can become a budgeting issue. But on a sort of day-to-day basis, where social work services, for example, giving them as an example, issue an account in respect of care charges, they get the credit immediately, and that gets put into their income budget. So how it works through in the budget, the sort of strategic budget in particular, which is what this report is principally about, is the finance department has to make provision for bad and doubtful debt. So there's a figure in the account somewhere which basically says we might not recover all of our debt, and that's discussed with external audit. It has to be prudent, so it has to be sufficient to cover the risk of non-recovery of debt, but also not too extensive, shall we say. So it can be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% depending on the nature of the debt and those sorts of things. So it doesn't have a direct impact on the budget, but it does have an impact on the council's overall financial position. So when finance bring back papers on balances and these sorts of things, that's where those figures start to appear, and you start to see them in that process.
Thank you. You're welcome. You wish to add anything further, Mr. Haswell?
I think I'm hoping I get it right, and I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, but in simple layman's terms, Councillor McKee, you can't use debt as against a budget overspend. It doesn't work that way. So you can't say we're owed £200,000 and we've got an overspend of £200,000, therefore we'll marry the two together. That's not how it works at all. There's commitment accounting that goes through it and all sorts of things, and I'm not an accountant, so I'll shut up at that point. But the answer to your question is no.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. Two members wanting to contribute, Councillor Watts and Councillor Dykes. Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. You'd mind if you could further indulge me in that I have 3 points to raise. The first one is on page 24, and it's the statement that refers to the low risk. I just wondered if, apropos Appendix 3 on the next page, does this low risk rating refer to all 4 categories of assessment rationale, that is operational, monetary, legal and reputational? That's my first point. Yes.
Can we perhaps take them in sequence, and would you like to respond to that, Kevin, please?
Thank you, Chair. I think I understand what you're saying, and the answer is yes. I mean, the low risk rating has been applied to the 2 findings or the 2 concerns that emerge from the report. So the external auditors are saying neither of these are of particular concern. They do have actions attached to them which they're asking us to deliver on, but they're not tagging them as high risk. So I think the answer is yes.
Second point, Alistair, please.
Second point is on page 15. It's just me not understanding what this statement means. Demonstration of good practice. Bullet point 4, efforts are being made by services to benchmark on a localised rather than corporate basis. I'm not quite sure what that means.
Please.
Chair, that's a reference to the Council's approach to using benchmarking. When it's constructing the corporate budget, it's not taking benchmarking into account at that stage, but what is happening at a local level, that's at service-based level, that's what we mean by a localised level. So services such as DG First actually buy into a service which provides benchmarking information for them. So as they're looking at their budget and they're looking at opportunities for savings or efficiencies, they're referring to specific benchmarking data and benchmarking activity. The point the external auditors are making really is that you don't see that process at a corporate level in the construction of the corporate budget. So I think they're drawing that distinction, and indeed that's one of the things they're asking that we evidence better as part of our corporate budget process, that we are aware of benchmarking data and we are taking it into account as part of the opportunity to have a good and effective budget.
Satisfied, Alistair?
Yes, thank you.
And the third point?
And the third point is on page 13. There was an article in the press recently and on TV, and I know I can't believe everything that you see there, but it reminded me on the boxed point, the box and the 4th bullet point, again, public bodies are considering how they can work better together, as a way, an unfortunate phrase, as a way to reduce costs. This article on television referred to the cooperation between 2 of the Ayrshire authorities in terms of the roads budget. And that put me in mind of the fact that in some time in the past we have had discussions about how we can best cooperate with other authorities. And I'm wondering if this is sort of what this bullet point is pointing us in the direction of that kind of activity. Is it suggesting that we should work harder and try to achieve efficiencies by working together with other authorities? Or does it mean something completely different?
Mr Haswell, do you wish to respond to that in the first instance?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Councillor Witts is quite right. This paragraph here relates to local authorities in general and public bodies in general. It's not specific to Dumfries and Galloway. But Dumfries and Galloway members are aware we are looking at various areas of cooperation, particularly with East Ayrshire. We have already got SOSA, which is our cooperative body with Scottish Borders. We're even looking across the border now at Carlisle and Cumbria and Northumbria as ways of cooperating. We also cooperate fully with the NHS insofar as we possibly can, and you'll be aware that we're looking forward to a bill which is coming out in terms of health and social care partnerships and the future of health and social care. So we are taking it on board. I think what the auditors have found out is it's extremely difficult for public bodies to come into that kind of cooperative way of working. There's not only issues of an organisation, but also politics, etc., but they are pointing us in that direction, and we're certainly following that direction, there's no doubt about that.
Satisfied with the response? Before I bring Jill in, can I say, colleagues, that I started off my local government career in 1967 working for Ayr County Council. Some of us would say, in fact, that dismembering the fair county of Ayr into 3 local authorities, as has been done in the most recent reorganisation, was little short of a blasphemy. But there you go, indulge an old man. Jill, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just on page 15. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I actually think this is a real good report, and that we've moved forward as a council dramatically since the bad report in 2007. And I think a lot of credit's due to the staff, in particular, for the work that they've actually done to bring us up to, I mean, we can do our job as a committee member, but actually in behind the scenes, the staff have done a really, really good job to turn this around and to bring us up to the level that we're at, and I'm delighted to see this report in front of us today. However, page 15, it was really to do with good practice. I notice in particular that good practice stipulates round about the rolling 3-year budget, and I think that's helped to improve where we are today because we're embedding things as we move forward. So the fact that we're actually putting forward 3-year rolling budgets, it's actually very helpful, not just for members, but for members of the public and for staff as well, because it actually gives the direction of travel. So from that point of view, I'm delighted to see that it's recorded as good practice. Also on page 17, when we talk about risks to service delivery as a consequence of the need to reduce costs and deliver identified efficiency savings. I just wondered if I could ask, obviously risk isn't just financial, and I just wondered where we are around about reputational risk, etc. as well, and where that's recorded from this type of thing, and whether or not our external auditors take that on board. When I know financial is the one that Audit Scotland really looks at, but obviously there are other types of risk as well.
Kevin, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, internal audit are responsible for providing support on risk management to the Council since April of last year. We haven't seen much in the way of reputation risk emerging in risk registers that have been developed so far, and it's something that we're well aware of. It's something that we're actually going to try and encourage the corporate management team to start to consider, because it is arguable that the corporate risk register should really be a reputation risk register, so to speak. So, but I think your point's well made, which is in this report, the focus is very much on budgeting and financial aspects and so on. So I don't think, you know, if you, it's many, many years since a local authority fouled up on its budget quite seriously. But when that was happening a number of years ago, when I was coming into local government, the damage to local authority reputation was very, very severe as a result. So there is a reputational dimension. Local authorities are required by law to set a balanced budget, and that has become very challenging in recent years with the reductions that need to be made and worked through. But nevertheless, that's the obligation. So fortunately, no council has put itself in the position of not delivering a balanced budget. But say in my very early local government career, Lambeth Council in particular in London refused to set a budget years ago. Members were surcharged, and it was a cause célèbre for about 10 years in total. It was still being talked about. So I think reputational risk is at the back of this, but it's not a direct consideration.
Yes, please.
Sorry, I just used reputational risk as an example. I mean, it could be anything. It might be staff or whatever. But, I mean, all those things actually should be on a risk register somewhere. We, as a committee, are responsible for corporate risk register as such, but the service committees are responsible for their own risk registers. And I note that in this report, it does stipulate that those risk registers are dealt with through service committees, and I just wondered, we have discussed it as a committee before, so apologies, Chair, but I just wondered when we were going to see those risk registers actually appearing at committees, so that the members on those committees do understand that their service has a risk register in place as well.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, following decisions of the committee made at previous meetings, the proposal is to bring the corporate risk register before this committee at its next meeting, that's in December. We're looking at having a seminar type session at the conclusion of business in which members will have the opportunity to look in more detail at, I think it's 7 corporate risks we have in the risk register. Beyond that, in February and April of next year, the dates have not been finalised yet, but those 2 committees will also be receiving service risk registers. The proposal is to bring 3 services to one and 3 services to the next one. So really by the end of April, this committee should have seen or will have seen all of the risk registers as they are currently constructed and have had an opportunity to come to an understanding of what they're about.
Okay, Vice Chair, please.
Thanks very much. Firstly, can I start off by reiterating what you said about Jill Dykes before? I mean, myself and Jill didn't always see eye to eye at this committee, but I think she led it very well. And at the end of the day, the considerations from all members were taken on board. And when you look at the training and that we actually received after the decisions that were actually made, she did deserve that credit where credit was actually due. Can I come on to page 17 again and just looking down the centre issue there, halfway down it says all saving options at risk and impact assessed. Now, just for clarity more than anything else, Kevin, about what's the process before it actually gets into reports for impact assessed and risk assessed? Maybe it's your job, Alec, to do that one, so that members are clear that when it comes to committee in a report, what process has it been that the risk assessment, you know, it's only usually the 2-line thing that comes to us. It's looking at the actual process and what the staff actually do.
Chair, specifically on this piece of work, which was about budgeting, the external auditors sought evidence that the council had considered this. And you may remember for budget setting last year, which began around about this time of the year, normally the cycle is, there were various budget development proposals, savings options and so on, and they were all templated. And those went to, unusually, but it was the first time last year, there was sufficient time to take them through service committees. So when the council took its budget decisions in February, it had before it all of the templates with all of the savings proposals on it, and all of which had been impact assessed by the service committees. So I think we're talking about maybe 2 different things. There's an impact assessment program, or a process relating principally to equalities, but other matters as well, which is what appears in standard committee reports. It's a standard paragraph, it's a standing paragraph. And that's where you tend to get, as the council points out, the rather bland 2-line phrase that says, you know, we've considered impact assessment and there isn't any. But for the budget process, which is what this report is about, there was, in my understanding, a very effective scrutiny process at service committee level. And when council took its final decisions, it had that information in front of it.
You want to come back, Archie? No? Okay, thanks. Any other member, any other questions, comments they wish to make or raise? If not, then can we proceed to the recommendations? You'll see at there's contained at section 2 of the report, but paragraph 3.2 brings specifically to our attention that there are 2 recommendations which have been made in the local report and an action plan agreed with officers. Members are invited to consider the adequacy of the management response and to note that the actions will be followed up by the external auditor in due course. I presume that these are acceptable to the committee, and that we would take that our decision would be based on that basis. Jill?
Chair, could I don't know if we're allowed to, but if we are, could we just add our thanks to the staff for the hard work and effort that they've put in to bring us to this stage, because, I mean, it has been quite a challenge, and I think as a committee we would probably understand that those challenges, as some of them we found as challenging ourselves. So if at all possible, I would quite like that comment added if we can.
Well, I mean, I think that's a very good suggestion. And let me say for the record that my attitude is that yes, we're allowed to until such time as the governance officer says we can't. So on that basis, I think we incorporate that into the recommendations as well. Okay, thanks, Claire. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 5, which is the Information Commissioner's Office Data Protection Audit Action Plan, and it's the final update report. Again, the purpose of this report is to provide members with assurance of completion of the ICO's Data Protection Audit Action Plan, and to make members aware of the ongoing review activity to be undertaken to ensure continued compliance with the implemented actions. Mr. Haswell, do you have anything further to add to the report? And can I say, before bringing you in, Mr. London, the Data Protection Officer, is also available at the back of the... Sorry, you moved forward. Good to see you. Thank you. To answer any detailed or specific questions. Alex, please.
Thanks, Chairman. I think very little to add to the report. I think we had 41 recommendations from the Audit Action Plan. This is number 41. It's the check plan that we do on buildings, and I know to my cost that there's already been a spot check in the Chief Executive's building because I got the feedback from it. We have taken it very seriously, Chairman. We've taken it forward. This committee took the ICO recommendations very seriously and has monitored carefully us applying these recommendations. Really nothing to add to the report. We will continue to monitor, and reports will come back to this committee as necessary and appropriate.
Before asking Mr. London if he's any specific comments to make at this stage, can I say that, you know, I've been in Mr. Haswell's room, colleagues, twice in the last few days, and I've never seen it looking as tidy. So that is obviously a spin-off from the implementation of these recommendations. No, it's nothing to do with me coming, Claire. Anyway, do you wish to make any comments on what Mr. Haswell has said, Mr. London? No, right. Colleagues, Councillor Bell and then Councillor Witts.
Thanks, Chair. It's just on a spot check item on page 30 out of 64. I've a question. The digilocks, when they're used, how often have the codes been changed? You know, I've no idea how long they've been. If Aaron could maybe answer that one. The second question, visitors badge, you know, for visitors coming to building. I have seen visitors sign into buildings and whatnot, but does this count for people coming into the public here for full council meetings? Because I have been here on a regular basis and I have seen some visitors not with visitors badge on, so I wonder if that could be flagged up. Digilocks first, please.
Currently, we've deemed that they would be changed every 4 months. So currently what we do is we send a reminder out to relevant buildings, the lead tenants, and it's for them to make the changes. There's also guidance when a member of staff leaves, an email is generated to the manager and they're advised to consider whether they need to make any changes at that point in time for security issues. That's the digilocks. In regards to visitors' badges, the first part was that we need to issue them in the first instance and make sure everybody signs in. We're taking that a step forward in that we're reviewing the whole ID badge system. One of the actions was to provide ID badges to staff, and what we're looking to do is whether the same ability can be used for members of the public. One of the things we're considering is whether we have different types of ID badges based on the different people, whether they are external members of the public, whether they're internal. So for me, going to Buccleuch Street, I'm a visitor to that building. So we are considering that currently, but at the moment, at least everyone should sign in.
Want to come back?
I think it's appropriate that we should actually have some sort of template that we're following out all these codes and whatnot. I think the way forward would to beef up this in case there's any confidential information could be found by a visitor entering a building. But I think if they have a visitor's badge, people can recognise and say, well, that's the visitor there, we know what's coming in. I know they can sign into a building, but anyone can sign in under a false name.
Part of what we're looking at in terms of reviewing the visitors' badges is the onus on the reception staff as well. I know there's been actually a few changes made here through Eddie Whitefield, who's specifically requested that if a member of staff has a visitor in the building, they escort them to the reception and they hand over their visitor's ID badge, their visitor's badge. So part of the thing is that we want to put on the onus on the reception staff to make sure that they take responsibility as well. So we're definitely looking to beef it up.
That's fine, Graham. Thanks. Councillor Witts, Councillor Ryburn, Councillor Dykes.
Thanks, Chair. My question is regarding the spot check item list on page 30, and I've raised this in the past, B23, with reference to the appropriate disposal of confidential waste. Are locked cabinets used for confidential waste in line with council policy? I believe that steps were being taken to deal with that and raised that matter sometime in the past.
In relation to that, one of the action was to review our confidential waste process. So what we've now done is we've got 2 organisations who we source cabinets off of. The guidance is that you now do not use confidential waste bags because they defeat the purpose unless they're locked away at night, whereas the confidential waste cabinets are locked and the paper goes in and cannot be accessed. These are accessed through connecting through the procurement process.
You said that bags are no longer to be used, but members have bags. And my point a year ago in this was by no means an attempt to embarrass the Mr. Haspel. I'm not in the business of doing that. But I did think that, you know, you generate waste at home and you bring it in. And the point what I made then was you have to, you have to make sure that it's safely deposited somewhere before it's disposed of. And members can't really, because often we work at home, we can't really just bring in, it's not, bags are useful for us, that's the point I'm making. Are you saying that we're not to use bags anymore, or what?
Certainly, specifically what I mentioned was in relation to council buildings. In terms of yourselves, it's maybe that we need to specifically review that. It's a risk assessment basis. The decision will be based on risk assessment. So is it appropriate that we, because they do cost money, do we provide all members with a cabinet, or do we review the process whereby you use bags and it's more the transportation and the storage while they're in your house that we review and tighten up?
Mr. Haswell, do you wish to add to that?
Yeah, it raises an interesting point. Whether members should be taking confidential information out of council buildings is one question, but I think we've got to do this risk has got to be assessed. Members bring their confidential waste in. While the confidential waste in their house, it's their responsibility. The council can't accept responsibility for that. What we can do is set up a system which will enable you to make sure that the confidential waste is suitably treated. Once it comes into this building, I think the point that Aaron was making is once it comes into this building, it has got to be treated properly by the officers. But that's one we'll take back, Chairman, and have a further look at.
That's reassuring. The last thing I would want would be a special box in a new waste collection system, you know, to be located at councillors' homes. Anyway, Vice Chair.
Thanks, yeah. It's actually coming to home working, and with regard B42 have staff who are working from home complete the homework and security assessment. I'm trying to not duplicate any work, but obviously staff who are working at home have to do their DSE risk assessment as well. Is that done at the same time as the home security risk assessment? Because it could probably save a bit of time and effort in that particular area.
I'm not sure at this particular point in time, but one thing I can tell you is we're reviewing the whole home working aspect, including the home working policy. And what we're looking to do is, in conjunction with HR, is get everyone round the table, myself, health and safety rep, insurance, council insurance, home insurance, and IT, and have a full, robust policy. So I'll take a note of that and make sure that that's put forward. I'm not sure if that is the case at the moment, but it does make perfect sense.
Jill, Councillor next.
Thank you. Just on the spot check items, on numerous numbers of these, I just think it might be worthwhile for members to get a little reminder as to what they should be doing as well. We tend to all wear our badges when we're in this building, but I know that just myself as well, we're guilty of, when we go to other buildings, of signing in and not actually wearing these badges. Somebody talked about Buccleuch Street earlier, but we go to area committee, we wear these badges all the time when we're in this building, but because we don't actually need to use our badge to put in the microphone system in the area committee room, we tend not always to be as up to speed as we probably should be. So maybe a gentle reminder for members of exactly what they're supposed to be doing, not just on the council premises in this building, but maybe in the others as well. And obviously from a home working point of view and a laptop point of view, I think it might be helpful. If staff have got to comply, then we should be doing so as well. I just think we should have a note out to everybody.
Either Mr Linden or you wish to respond to that?
Yeah, I'll put something together and make sure it's circulated.
Thank you. Councillor McKee. David?
I must say, in defence of the lady behind the desk in the municipal chambers, she does say to councillors about where's your badge, and we tend to ignore it, and we need to be put in their place, if you like. Just a couple of things. Given the recent publicity we've had on empty buildings, has there something been put in place for an independent person to go through a building and ensure that it's emptied, no papers are left lying? Another thing, right at the bottom of page 30, you've got a star there, our staff, depending on the level of sensitivity of personal information, transporting this securely. I would suggest that all personal information should be transported securely, irrespective of the level of sensitivity. Just transport all papers securely, and that does away with any doubt.
Thanks. I'll ask Mr Hazel to respond to that in the first instance. Alex?
Thanks, Chairman. I think Councillor McKee is alluding to the recent issue that arose at Moffat Academy, where the building had been out of use for about 2 years, and we took some members of the public in to look at what were described as surplus desks and chairs, and a cupboard was found to contain some personal data. Clearly that's not acceptable. What I would say is that the building was probably closed before we became really data protection conscious, but I have no doubt, and there will be an investigation, I have no doubt that someone somewhere was told to empty the building and check it. I can't be absolutely certain of that until we've done the investigation. It was some time ago. What I can tell you is that every empty building that the council owns has now been made secure, and there will be a check in all the buildings to make sure that there's no information. The issue was not leaving the things in the empty building, which was secure. The issue was taking people in to look at the things in the empty building. So I can give members of this committee that absolute assurance that the minute that came to our attention, that Judex Paul picked up on that, and Aaron has been doing a piece of work to make sure buildings are, one, secure, and two, then checked. The main issue was to get them secure first, however. So that work is ongoing, and there will be a report back. I'm expecting to get a report back from Aaron and Judex about what exactly happened at Moffat.
Wish to come back, David?
If you don't mind, I would just assume that when they're vacating a building like that, everything should be taken out. And making it secure was only to protect the furniture and the dust. But to leave papers in it is an absolute nonsense. I don't know how they actually done that. And really, they need to tighten up and ensure that no papers are left in buildings.
I couldn't agree more with the member. I can only say, yes, I 100% agree with you. It clearly didn't happen on this occasion. What we've got to do is make sure that it doesn't happen on a future occasion, and that it hasn't happened. We closed, I think, 10 schools over a period of 2 years. Now, we're going back through all those buildings. Every time we empty an office or a porta cabin or whatever, we're going back and making sure that there's been nothing left. And for the future, we will have a process and a procedure in place which will be applied by the people who are emptying the buildings. Insofar as the issue of carrying personal information, we have instituted a system whereby those officers who are carrying sensitive personal information have a locked briefcase. That was not the case until the recent past.
Councillor Bell, Graham?
Thanks, Chair. Just when you mentioned about sensitive information, obviously there's certain buildings that might be closing in the future or might not be closing in the future. Who's responsible? Is this property services, or would they be responsible for a remit, or be a janitor or something like that have to come and clear up?
The people responsible are the people who are emptying the building. Property services per se no longer exists, Councillor Bell. We now have architectural and property services. We don't have property services. It's going to be a different organisation. That's all I'm going to say. Well, I'm sorry. The director of the the service is responsible for emptying his buildings. This has been what has been wrong with partially property services, in that people at a fairly low level were being expected to accept responsibility for emptying the buildings. It was not their responsibility for ensuring the building was empty. It was for the director to make sure there was a system in place to ensure that the building was empty. I'm afraid I'm one of those directors who believes that the buck stops with me and I take responsibility for it.
Reassured? Thank you. On the wider issue, actually, and I'm sure, Mr. Haswell, if you feel it's an unfair question, you'll tell me, knowing you. It's on the back of recent unfortunate events that Councillor McKee's already alluded to. Are you satisfied, insofar as you reasonably can be, that all recent legislation is being complied with? I know that there's legislative requirements, there's systems, and of course then there's human error or human negligence. But looking at it from the perspective of sort of compliance with legislative requirements, are you as reasonably satisfied as you can be that that is indeed the case, sir?
I'm trying to find and remember the phrase that a former chief executive used to use when he signed off the accounts in relation to title deeds, Councillor Guinness. I'm as satisfied as I possibly can be, yes. We are doing a review, and I think the Council is now taking information management very, very seriously indeed. We've built up a team who are responsible for information and records management, and two of them are in the room here today. Yes, I'm as satisfied as I possibly can be.
Thanks very much. Any other member, any questions, comment? Sorry, Vice Chair, Archie.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just coming back to the report itself. I mean, obviously this has been a big piece of work by the staff involved, including Aaron and Judex, and it's been a worthwhile exercise, I think, to bring that report back to a conclusion here today. Obviously, there are still some issues with regards to the historical things that we're doing, but I think it's been a good piece of work, and just to add my thanks to the staff that have done that.
That's appreciated, Archie. Right, if there are no further comments, then can we proceed to the recommendations? Sorry, beg pardon.
Sorry, could I just ask one thing? How often are the spot checks carried out? Sorry.
Aaron?
The intention, just as Councillor Drysborough mentioned about doing it at the same time as the DSE, there's currently health and safety checks done in the buildings, and they're on a monthly basis, so the intention would be that that would be the same case for this. In terms of the spot checks, they are as and when required, but I would be looking to at least conduct one of them every month or so, ourselves.
Okay, satisfied? Right, okay. On that basis then, can we move to the recommendations that contained in section 2 of the report? We're being asked to note the completion of the ICO's Data Protection Audit Action Plan and to note the creation and implementation of the Data Protection Inspection Checklist, which is designed to provide assurance that compliance with implemented actions continues. Acceptable? Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the item pertaining to the integration of customer service centres data protection considerations report. It's a report by Mr Haswell in his capacity as Director of Chief Executive Service, and the report presents two members the findings from the data protection inspection carried out at the recently integrated Gretna Customer Service Centre and the recommendations to be implemented at this location, and then thereafter considered throughout the remainder of the CSC integration project. Mr Haswell, do you wish to speak to the report or add anything?
This was a report requested specifically by members of this committee, Chairman. I've really nothing to add. Staff went along. You'll see there are a list of recommended areas for improvement. My understanding is that they are being worked through at the moment. I actually had the opportunity of speaking with the staff at the Gretna Centre in the last week to 10 days, and they were very pleased with the way that the Council had reacted to their concerns about data protection and indeed health and safety. I'm quite sure Aaron, who was there, will be able to answer members' detailed questions.
Thanks very much, Mr Haswell. Well, colleagues, you asked for it. Are you satisfied as to the terms of it? Vice Chair?
Chair, as it was in my word, I was certainly fervent in trying to get it done, and it certainly has been. I would agree with what Alex has said. I've actually spoke to a member of staff as well, and they've been extremely pleased with the response from the action that came from the Audit and Risk Committee, and it's good to see that it's actually happening and working through the action plans.
Thanks, Vice Chair. Councillor Dykes. Jill?
Thank you. I would just like to reiterate those comments. I think it's important. This is a piece of work that was brought forward by the Audit and Risk Committee, and I think it's been very worthwhile, and it just shows that members can actually put something on the table when they feel that it's necessary to have a look at, and it's been delivered, and I hope that it will make the necessary improvements. I'm sure it will.
Okay. Any other member, any comments or etc.? Well, can we move then to the recommendations? Again, colleagues, contained in section 2 of the report, we're being asked to note the completion of the ICO's Data Protection Audit Action Plan, and to note the creation and implementation of the Data Protection Inspection Checklist, which is detailed in the appendix to the report, and which is designed to provide assurance that compliance with implemented actions continues. Agreed? Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item number 7. Internal audit reports issued. It's a report by the Director of Chief Executive Services. This is a standing item on the agenda of this committee to allow members to discuss reports issued by internal audit. There's one departmental systems audit report here today. That's the first one. There are 2 school audit reports, reports 2 and 3, and 1 grants payment audit report, which have been finalised since the last meeting. They're set out, in a sequential order. Debt control and social work services is the first. Second, Lockerbie Academy School Fund report, second, and an Academy School Fund report, third. And lastly, but by no means least, the Leader Annual Review for 2012-13. The report author is Mr. Geraghty. Do you have anything to add further, or anything further to add, Kevin, to your reports? Any? Councillor McKee?
Thanks, Chair. Just on paragraph 3, page 2, I'm a wee bit dim-like, but...
Sorry, Councillor McKee, can I interject? Forgive me, that's remiss of me.
Certainly.
I'm very much finding my feet here today. Can we deal with these reports in sequence, please? So that if any member has any comments, pertaining to the first report, i.e. that's the social work report, we'll take it and then move on to the others in sequence. So your comments are related to the first report?
Yes.
Thank you, and my apologies for interrupting you.
No problem. I hadn't lost my place. I've got it underlined. I'd like clarity between charging orders and deferred payment agreements. They would seem to do the same thing, but there's a question about I don't know whether that's legality or what it exactly is. But if you could just clarify the reason for it should be deferred payment agreements as against charging orders. Sorry if caught you unawares.
Thank you, Chair. I apologise if the report doesn't convey the difference. So it's a complex area, but we were trying to make sure that the report at least communicated the basic difference. The point is well made. There is a legal requirement on the Council to offer, in suitable cases, a deferred payment agreement. The Council does not at the moment do that. It uses an alternative mechanism called a charging order. Now, DPA, deferred payment agreement, basically involves a legal agreement between the parties, which implies that the other person, the client, the service user, actually has capacity to sign an agreement, has received appropriate legal advice, and is prepared to sign such an agreement. And that agreement then becomes a charge on the property. I think it's called a standard security. Okay. With a charging order, that's a debt recovery mechanism, and the Council is entitled to apply a charging order on a property without reference to the debtor. In effect, as I say, it's a debt control mechanism. We have the power to issue charging orders in respect of monies owed by clients in residential care as a result of an earlier piece of legislation. And what's happened is, I think it's quite common in Scotland, unfortunately, but those two powers have been confused. And this is not the only council in that situation, but it has emerged, having looked at this case, that we're applying the wrong mechanism, shall we say. It's not a wrong mechanism, but we're not applying the correct mechanism, is what I should say. So a deferred payment agreement which embodies the principle of a written agreement between the service user and the council, and this being a legal agreement, the council is not currently offering that, and it should be under the legislation. So that's the difference. So to sort of make that distinction, one of our recommendations is to say charging orders should only be requested by the team that's responsible for debt management, the corporate debt team, rather than social work services. Social work services can go ahead with deferred payment agreements, but if it comes to debt recovery, that should sit with the debt recovery team, the central debt recovery team.
Satisfies, David, or do you want to come back?
I do, just briefly. So a charging order could come into place, say a deferred payment agreement is made up, then unfortunately the client dies and payment becomes due and the family says they're not going to pay it, then a charging order would come into place then, is it? Would that be necessary or no necessary?
Chair, the circumstances under which a charging order would come would be where a person that's liable to pay us hasn't paid us. A deferred payment agreement covers the element of residential care charges that emanate from ownership of property. Bear in mind there are two elements to the charges. There's an element that's based on what I would loosely but probably incorrectly call current assets, that's savings or investments or these sorts of things, okay? So that's one element of the charge. The other element of the charge comes from ownership of a property asset, which obviously isn't a liquid asset, it's not readily available. So the purpose of this is to avoid forcing people to have to sell their home when they go into care, and so they're allowed to defer it, and in effect, they give us a mortgage on their property for that element of care. So they owe, in effect, they owe two parts. The first part they're billed on regularly and they're expected to pay, and if they fail to pay that, we then take debt recovery mechanism. We have a variety of mechanisms available. For the other side, for the charging order side, currently where a charging order is applied, that becomes payable on death or on disposal of the property. And there isn't any question about our entitlement to that money, should we say. A solicitor handling the disposal of the property will pay the council as a debtor against that. In the case of a deferred payment agreement, that has the same effect as a charging order. It's a different legal mechanism, so to speak. So you would never have the situation where somebody who has had a DPA, then we would apply a charging order. The DPA itself is sufficient to recover the money.
I have a number of, you're welcome, sir. I have a number of members waiting to come in. Councillor Dykes, Bell, Councillor Dryborough, Councillor Gilroy and Councillor Witts. Councillor Dykes, first please.
Thank you. It's just on page 2, the first of the risks to be addressed, non-compliance with legislative requirements. I wonder, it says here that action should be addressed by the interim chief social work officer, and I wonder if that is the correct person to be addressing that particular risk. I could understand it if there was a director of service in place and that might be the person that would be given that action, but I just have a query around about whether or not that is the right person or whether it should be that person in conjunction with somebody else. I just wondered if I could have clarification.
I'll bring Mr Haswell in. Can I say that that's the first divergence between you and I at this meeting? Alex?
Thanks, Chairman. Certainly the interim chief social work officer, delete the word interim, he's the chief social work officer as far as this council is concerned. It's his responsibility. He must take ownership of it. That's the point I was making earlier on. People have, at a senior level, have got to take ownership and then the responsibility for making sure that something happens. And that's the reason why it's been given to the chief social work officer. He will get all the support and help that he requires to do it from my legal team, but it'll be for him to accept responsibility.
That was I have to agree with that response, Councillor Dykes, for the record, but please, if you wish to come back.
It was just I wondered about the legal team side of it, but you've clarified that for me, so thank you.
But I think, I make no apologies for reiterating what Mr Haswell has already said. I think, that responsibility has got to be picked up, where it lies. It's as simple as that. Anyway, nothing further to add, no? Right, okay. Councillor Bell, Graham.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of points here. £1.5 million debt recovery. Where are we in other local authorities in Scotland? Obviously, other local authorities might be suffering the same sort of problem. Where are we? Have you got benchmarking figures to where we are, percentages and whatnot on that? The next question is, you mentioned the debt recovery team. Obviously, there'll be a lot of legal fees built into that. Obviously, there might be sheriff officers and whatnot. So where's the costings on that, obviously, to get the £1.5 million back? Because obviously there's going to be some sort of legal implications along the way, along the road. So I'm just wondering how much of that will be in legal fees, sheriff's officers, obviously usually £200-300 to send a sheriff's officer to deal with something. So there must be costs involved in that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the £1.5 million debt that's referred to is really in the report to provide context. The report's not about that debt, it's about the other sort of debt. But nevertheless, it's an important figure. It's fair to say that the nature of clients involved here makes debt recovery a challenging issue, and the practice in the past has tended to be to put that debt on hold while discussions take place with families or with client representatives, this sort of thing. So it's somewhat difficult to recover, but that doesn't mean to say that we don't pursue it. There is currently a lot of activity going on in terms of trying to encourage payment of that debt and settlement of that debt. If you like, there's a real effort going on. Originally, in audit, the focus of the audit was going to be around that area, but there's no point in auditing something that's already underway, so to speak. So that's why our focus came onto this longer-term debt in relation to deferred payment agreements. In terms of benchmarking, no, I don't have any figures. They may be actually quite difficult to obtain because different practices occur at different authorities, there are different policies in place and so on. So I'm afraid I can't give you any benchmarking data. The figure that we've quoted, £1.5 million, is quite a substantial proportion of our outstanding debt. But as mentioned previously, there is also provision in the accounts for non-recovery of some of that debt. That's not to say we're giving up on it, but some of it may prove very difficult to recover. That will work its way through in write-off reports that come before the Council, usually on an annual basis. Debt that's to be written off is reported to members, and any debt that's above £5,000, any individual debt that's above £5,000 is specifically identified. So there's an opportunity perhaps later, if some of this proves very intractable and very difficult to recover, members will have an opportunity to see the scale of that. But I'm afraid I don't have benchmarking figures for other local authorities. In terms of costs of recovery and so on, there are costs involved, obviously, in recovering debt. We don't automatically go to the sheriff officer. We used to use a number of sheriff officers to recover our debt, and we moved to a single provider a few years back, and we received, as a result of that tendering process, we achieved substantial savings in terms of the fee being charged by the sheriff officer. Obviously, if there are court fees and so on, they can be attached to the debtor rather than to the council. But it's not an area that the council is enthusiastic to exploit, should we say. It's not like car parking companies who, the minute you don't pay your debt, it doubles, it trebles, that sort of stuff. That isn't how it works. Generally, it's about a process that's seen to be a sustained pressure that's applied, and that's what produces results. We do find, and we're particularly finding more recently, that if fairly stiff legal letters are written to debtors, we are getting a much better response these days, and our debt recovery is improving on a number of fronts. So that's where the effort is going at the moment, is an attempt to persuade people to face up to their responsibilities to pay the council what they owe.
Do you wish to come back, Graham? Okay, thank you. Vice Chair, Archie.
Thanks, Chair. And I'm just looking at the risk with regard to social work services. I understand that the social work services has been under a bit of pressure recently from committee. And looking at the agreed action plan, how confident are you that that action plan will reduce the risk to the council, and what opportunity is there to get social work services a report back on this? Understand that there will be a commitment from social work services to do that piece of work.
It is a challenging report for social work services, but not absurdly so. I would be concerned as an auditor if I was placing an additional burden on social work services that I thought would be particularly challenging for them at this time. I'd have to take account of that. This is largely an administrative process. There will be additional work involved in deferred payment agreements, just the operation of deferred payment agreements in comparison with charging orders, because it's a more protracted process and involves more stages involved in that. So there is additional work coming to the department as a result of that. In terms of the scheme, developing a scheme, there is ample support for social work services in developing a scheme. particularly from legal services colleagues who've offered to help draft, in particular, information for customers, for clients, service users, these sorts of things. As we speak, as it happens to be fortuitous, there is a meeting taking place this morning to take this action forward. Social work services have called a meeting of interested parties and are beginning to develop the process. It could come back to the Council as early as December, but that may be an ambitious target. Certainly it needs to come back to the Council by February. Those are the 2 dates for the next Social Work Services committees. So I'd expect the committee to be receiving a report either in December or in February. But in terms of resources, there is support for the department. It is a challenge. I think, they feel they've been administering these as best as they can in the circumstances. Our perspective is that more emphasis and more effort needs to go into this. But I think once we have a deferred payment agreement scheme and the responsibilities of the different parties are established, it should result in an overall improvement, both from the customer point of view and from the Council's point of view in terms of efficiency of administration.
Wish to come back, Vice Chair?
Thanks, Chair. And thanks for that, Kevin. I'm just wondering, Chair, then, if it would be appropriate for the Audit and Risk Committee to suggest an update report at Social Work Services Committee in February to make sure that risk is being addressed within that department.
I personally feel that would be a first-rate suggestion, but your take, Mr. Garrity?
Well, Chair, obviously we have recommendations tracking, so these specific recommendations will start to come back to you. The latest date on it is March 14, so this is going to come before the committee at least twice more in the monitoring report, where you'll be able to see what progress is being made. I think Social Work Services Committee will need to receive a fairly full report on the situation to provide context for the background. And to some extent, there's a technical issue at the heart of this, and that may need some explaining. But there are also some key decisions will need to be made by members or considered by members, such as, for instance, we've identified a figure of somewhere in the region of £850,000 as being the outstanding debt. It is in the scheme, the legislation, there is a recognition that a council might wish to put a cap on how much it's prepared to accept as total debt, and that's an issue that Social Work Services will have to consider. £850,000 is quite a lot of money for the council to be funding in the meantime. The recovery on this appears to be very good. I didn't develop any concerns about yield. It's not a question of 50% of this is going to get written off, nothing like that. But nevertheless, it's a large amount of money to have to fund, and the council would be entitled to put a cap on it, at which point applicants for deferred payment agreements would have to be prioritised, and they may have to be asked to wait a while before they could be offered a scheme. So we might have a situation where they can't really afford to do this, they're accumulating debt, but we're also not giving them access to the deferred payment agreement. So, there's some issues there that need to be contemplated and considered. But I do think the council needs to watch the total figure. 850,000 is certainly more than most people had thought it was. So it's a big figure involved.
Vice Chair?
Thanks very much, Kevin, for that clarity. I think that then it is upon us to put the Social Work Services Committee, they actually get that report to consider the things that Kevin has actually said with regards putting a cap on it, although that may cause some concern for clients. But I think it's important that Social Work Services do the scrutiny on this and make sure that the proper recommendations are taken forward to ensure the risk is reduced to the council.
I could not agree more with that, and I personally feel that it would not necessarily be any bad thing, in fact, if this committee were to make that clear. So can we are we all basically in agreement with what Councillor Driver has mentioned? Jill, on this point?
Yes, on this point. I mean, we've just discussed actually making sure that service committees understood the risk registers, and as far as I'm concerned, this is a risk. So I would agree we should be flagging it up to them and sending it to them for them to actually make their comments on.
Okay, that's helpful. Councillor Gilroy.
It's just an observation, and I wonder what the thoughts are. But, this is an internal audit report on social work services, and I just would have thought it would have been appropriate to have had someone from social work services here, perhaps the chief social work officer or the finance control team manager, since they're meant to be dealing with all these things. I'm not sure how, I'm new to this committee, so forgive me, but I'm not sure how appropriate it is that the internal auditor is answering the questions on behalf of the social work services.
Thank you. Mr. Haswell. Procedural issue?
We've had this discussion previously, Councillor Gilroy, and we've tried it both ways. What you've got before you is an auditor's report. You are dealing with the auditor's report and the auditor's findings. You're not dealing with the issues involving the individual social work issues or the individual finance issues. Once you have adopted these recommendations, they will go forward. It is for the Chief Social Work Officer to report back to his parent committee and say, I have an audit report which requires me to do X, Y, Z. I am now doing that, and it's for that committee, I think the Vice Chair mentioned earlier on, to scrutinise what social work are doing. We've tried it both ways. Believe me, when you start bringing individual officers in with specific responsibilities, this committee loses its way. I'm happy to talk with members offline. I think that's coming out of the training quite clearly. And I think you'll find that you have a specific task to do. You're very regulated in terms of what your responsibilities and roles are. I do take your point. It's nice to get it from the horse's mouth, but you're actually getting it from the horse's mouth. It's his responsibility to do the audits. I hope that's helpful. It maybe sounds unhelpful, but I'd be happy to develop it offline with members.
So there's no chance of getting the head teachers in then?
What more do you expect, Patsy, from a governance officer? Archie, you wanted to come back to this point.
Yeah, and I think when Jill was here, we mentioned this several times about the improvements that we can do for audit and risk committee, and it's certainly something that we can take forward in training, and perhaps there may be an opportunity later on, if there is certainly a big risk, and I would take this as a serious risk, this particular case, but I think Kevin's the person to challenge on this particular thing, but certainly I would look to the future and hopefully, find a way of perhaps challenging some directors, as you say, Alex. That's where the buck stops at the end of the day, and perhaps we've got an opportunity in that.
And you're about to come back, Mr. Haslett, and say that we mustn't arrogate powers to ourselves that we don't have. Would that be the case? Anyway, on you go, please.
No, I wasn't, Chairman. I was about to suggest that I think Mr. Geraghty alluded earlier on, when you bring the risk register, the corporate risk register will come here, and then you'll be looking at individual service risk registers. You'll have the opportunity of speaking to the directors at that point, and all of these issues can be covered at that point. What I would try to avoid, and I'm open to discussion, but what I would try to avoid is bringing a cast of thousands to this committee to speak to this committee about what are internal audit reports.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Chair, not at all wishing to
if I may interrupt,
stoke the flames.
Let's proceed.
I was going to say, for those who had the benefit of the training session, I'd simply point out that the trainer's perspective, which was a useful one, was to say, broadly agree with what Mr. Hassel agrees with, which is to say that in examining an audit report, the detail of the audit report should be, the auditor should be examined on that. The summary of the audit report, if you like, the key points, were almost a matter for the service. And so she was introducing the concept of a duality, a dual presentation of an audit report. Now, as has been pointed out, we've tried different models in the past, most of which have the one that we're currently using, which is I present the audit report, you ask me questions, and I defend it or admit defeat, depending on the circumstances, works. That's been effective. But it is also, I'd remind the committee with respect, it is also your job to be satisfied that the work that I do is adequate and fit for purpose. And if you only ever ask me those questions, you may obtain a distorted view. So I think it is a development issue for the committee to consider how it can obtain assurance that the internal auditor is doing something approaching a good job. And an obvious way to do that is to also ask the service what they think of the audit.
That's a very kind and a very helpful response. Thank you. Councillor Witts, Hallister.
Thanks, Chair. Before I ask my question, I would like to say as an ex-teacher, it's a tempting scenario to have a former head teachers brought before this committee, but I think maybe it would be better to decline that possibility. My question has mainly been answered because it's on the back of Councillor McKee's question regarding point 3.1 on page 2. regarding deferred payment agreements has mostly been answered, but I did want to ask that would this scenario only be, would this only be brought into play if the owner, it was the sole owner of a property and not in a situation where someone was in care and they were the joint owner of a property?
There are specific circumstances in which the property is not taken into account in assessing charges. I think they're referred to in the report. We talk about where there's, let me see if I can find it, excuse me. No, I haven't included it. Sorry, I thought at one stage in an earlier draft in the report, it actually listed the circumstances under which. So if there's another person over the age of 60, I think, in the property, those are the sorts of circumstances under which the value of the property is not taken into account. In terms of where there is a sole ownership, there may, of course, also be a mortgage on the property. So this is part of the scheme. The council will need to consider the extent to which it's prepared to go on the potential value of a property. If there's a 10% mortgage remaining, is it prepared to accept the balance? Because then there's a second charge, so to speak, on the property. So there are defined circumstances under which property is not taken into account for charging purposes, but there are also circumstances the council will need to determine how much of a value it's prepared to accept towards as security towards non-payment of charges or deferment of charges.
Alistair?
Thanks. So I take it from what you say, this is, in a sense, a piece of work still in progress.
Yes, Chair. As I say, it'll have to be developed as part of the scheme that will go to Social Work Services Committee for recommendation. It'll be very much up to members. I mean, in many circumstances, it's very unfortunate to have to say this, but in many circumstances, the value of the debt that accrues doesn't approach the total value of the property. You're comfortably within the total value in many cases. There are some cases where the value of the property is modest, and there are concerns about that. And as the capital gets eroded, we refer to that there's potential that capital eroded and it impacts the person's charges. But in most cases, the value of the property is more than sufficient to cover the debt that arises.
Okay, thank you. No one else has any comment? Sorry, Councillor McKee.
Just a quickie on that last point. It's on page 3, incorrect care charges may be applied. This is where you're keeping a note of the anticipated return from the house, but the people have, put it crudely, have lived longer than anticipated, with the result that what the income from the sale of the house is not going to cover their future care charges. Is annual checks frequently enough? Should it not be 6 monthly?
There is a process, there is an annual review on all clients and their financial charges, so it was felt appropriate to tie that into that process. There may be circumstances when somebody is approaching that situation and that would have to be kept under live review. I don't think anybody would be willing to wait till the next year before sorting the problem out, because the bottom line is there's no point in charging somebody money which they are not eligible to pay, and although you can adjust that position retrospectively, you might as well get it right first time. So yes, as somebody was approaching that situation of capital erosion where it would start to impact on the value of on the charges that would be made, that would be kept under live review.
Thanks. On that basis then, can we go back, as it were, to we've note the terms of this report, to approve the agreed action plan with the addendum that was suggested by Councillor Dryburgh earlier on. Okay, that acceptable? Right, thank you. And then the next report is the operation of the Lockerbie Academy School Fund, and this is a school audit report. Mr. Garrity, you don't have anything to add to this at all, Kevin? No? Okay. Members, any comments to make in this regard? Sorry, Vice Chair.
Kevin, we've had a few of these high school reports over the last year or so, and there seems to be quite a bit of learning that needs to be required under all the schools with regard to making sure that their scrutiny process, their governance process, and that's there are some schools, of course, who have charity status in some of their bank accounts, which is quite an awkward thing, I would imagine, for a school. Out of all these reports, I mean, and this is just an overall sort of question with regard the financial side of things. Are we getting that learning to other schools as well, to make sure that they're, when they do get their internal audit later on, that they will have that action plan in place for them?
Chair, yes, we'll visit all schools, and for us there's a bit of a dilemma. There's a pattern emerging on a couple of issues already. We could, and I should say that the reports are all going to the Director of Education as well, so the Director of Education and his team are familiar with what we're finding in the reports, so they can see patterns as well in this. We could, we're kind of not wishing to appear exploitative, we could write a paper for secondary schools now telling them, giving very good advice on how to run schools, school funds. If we do that, there's no point in carrying on with the audit, if you see what I mean. So we found value in visiting the individual schools that extends beyond, well beyond the simple recommendations that we're making. The team are very well received in schools. Often the admin staff and indeed the head teachers are very welcoming and very pleased to have an opportunity to discuss some issues. So it is a bit of a plod through. It is a bit formulaic. These are the problems that we see ourselves from this work. And it is a question of, well, have we got to the point where we've got sufficient weight of commonality to be writing to all schools and saying this is how to do it? Generally speaking, we found that schools prefer a customised approach. That is, they prefer the personal visit, the discussion of their particular circumstances, and corrective measures or advice being received and applied. We tend to find if you write guidance for schools and issue it, they say, yeah, that's great, we'll put that on the shelf for now and we'll try and deal with it in due course. So effectiveness, I think, is better served by individual visits, but yes, it is proving to be a bit of a slog. There's no doubt already that we could write good guidance for schools on the operation of school funds, and it's very likely that we'll produce, towards the end of the group of audits, we'll produce some sort of summary document and advice for schools which we'll give. But hopefully by which stage they'll all have adopted all our recommendations and they won't need the guidance anyway.
I think that's good advice, Kevin. I mean, obviously some schools may be a little bit different. As you've said, they are different from each other. And I think at the end of this audit trail, these internal audits, that some advice should be given to Education Department, you know, at the end of the day. And that'll be done through the Education Committee as well. And that'll give the Education Director a bit of steer, shall we say, to give good advice to each of the academies or the high schools that they're actually doing. So I think that would be a good idea, Chair.
I would certainly agree with that. Anyone, any different minded? Okay, no further questions. Then can we note the terms of the report and again approve the agreed action plan, you know, incorporating as well the suggestion that's just been put forward by Councillor Bryborough? Okay, then the next report is a similar such report, another school audit report. This time it's the operation of the Annan Academy School Fund. I presume, Kevin, that you have nothing further to add to the terms of the report. Any members, any issues on the back of what we've already discussed, to raise, etc.? If not, then can I suggest that we note the terms of the report and again approve note the report, note the key audit message, and approve the agreed action plan as set out there. Okay. Thanks very much indeed. And then the last report is a different type of report. It's the it's a grants programme audit report, and it involves the leader programme for 2012-2013. Anything further to add to your submissions, Kevin? No. Okay. Any members, any issues that they would want to raise in the back of it? It's an extremely succinct and in a way that's sounding complacent, you know, reassuring report. On that basis, then, can we note the terms of the report and the audit findings? Okay, thank you. Moving on then to item 8 on the agenda, which is performance against internal audit action plans. This is a report by the Director of Chief Executive Service. The report allows members to identify whether the control issues reported by internal audit are being addressed by management in an appropriate and timely manner. Unimplemented audit recommendations may increase business risks, and the scrutiny of outcomes reduces this likelihood. This report is presented quarterly. Members have been provided with a copy of each internal audit report when it's been published. Kevin, do you wish to add anything further to the terms of the report? Colleagues, any comments, questions? Councillor McKee. Yes, David.
Electricity charges, what's overall progress 60%? And I note this is it something agreed through or something set up by the Scottish Government? And are we gaining through it? Can you tell me?
Yes. The answer is yes. We're part of a national contract. We have access to that national contract, which has assisted us in energy charges and so on. It's a very complex area because you can bulk buy electricity, and that gets you very keen prices. But then there are some quite complicated elements to that. Those of you perhaps in the early days of mobile phones, we started out with pay-go phones, which were very simple and easy to understand. Then tariffs were introduced with all sorts of schemes and arrangements, and you could buy minutes or you could buy text. And it seemed to me, I give up at this point on mobile phone. The cost structure for mobile phones became very, very complex. We're kind of in that situation with electricity. It's not simple. There are transmission charges and all sorts of things that brought into the contract. So it is a very complex area to keep an eye on. It requires reasonably close monitoring, and like all of these things, like our own electricity charges at home, where we're being encouraged to switch providers and fix prices and these sorts of things. This is a complex market, and it offers real benefits if you are fleet of foot and can take advantage of what's on offer. But it contains the risk that you wind up paying more for your electricity than you should. We have a team of people working on this. It's an area of focus. The systems link system is very important in this regard, in that it will track and monitor a lot of information. And it was somewhat disappointing, the outcome from the audit, we looked at this, it was somewhat disappointing that we'd purchased the software but had not got round to implementing it for recording information. That's partly to do with where it sat in the organisation and a transition in terms of administration. Administration moved from property services across to PHES. But the systems link is in use. We've put a cross against that action 5. This is on page 51 of your papers. We've put a cross against that because we're not quite satisfied that it's in. Although it's being used, there's still the potential that it might dribble on a bit longer. So we've extended the closure date so it can be kept an eye on to March 14. But it is a complex area. Generally speaking, the council is doing okay, although the report did identify a couple of surprises and a bit more focus in a couple of areas, and that's what we reported at the time.
So, you wish to come back, David? No?
I can remember a number of years ago, we ran a kind of check on buildings' use and misuse, if you like, of electricity and gas. Is that still being monitored, or it kind of just dropped into that big cavity? Because trying to get people to switch their computers off and do various things is difficult. And I know there was an issue about heaters in offices, and they were supposed to be out, and I remember one night we were in here and it was freezing cold, and someone appeared with a heater, which was supposed to be taken out of buildings. Have you got better control of these sorts of things nowadays than we had a few years ago?
It is a dual approach. So the first element is capturing information about energy usage at specific buildings. That's what the systems link software is designed to do. It's not up and running fully yet. But what does happen is when bills come in, if there are anomalies or peculiarities, they're out of range, there's a sudden spike in consumption or in the billing, that is looked at. But generally speaking, bills are paid as they're received. The information is recorded on Systems Link. Systems Link will start to give us management information about energy usage and these sorts of things, and allow us eventually to get the most efficient mix of purchased electricity to suit that building depending on its requirements, because there are different rates at different times of the day, these sorts of things. The other element, the other end of the thing, so it's like a pincer movement, is the initiatives, the sort of the projects which are designed to reduce electricity consumption. And they do include things like banning the use of heaters and encouraging people to switch off lights and those sorts of things. So at the moment, those two things are distinct and separate activities. And there isn't really a tie-up between the two of those, but it will come in due course. With systems-linked information about energy consumption and usage at buildings, that will start to show where specific actions can be taken in relation to individual buildings. So at the moment, we have a general pattern of interventions, which does produce results, but it's difficult to see exactly where. And then when the information starts to come through on management side, we'll be able to take specific actions in relation to energy usage or excess energy usage. And, you know, I think members have agreed a reduction in energy usage as part of our budget savings. And there are great efforts made to achieve that. And that is reported on. I think I'd be so bold as to suggest it's somewhere in the region of 10% reduction over a couple of years. And that does get reported to members at the appropriate time in terms of how we're achieving that and whether we're achieving that or not. So it's a complex picture, but we have good contracts which do represent savings to the council. We have initiatives which are designed to reduce or limit expansion in energy spending, and we're collecting detailed management information on individual buildings, which isn't mature yet, but when that becomes mature, that will give us a real power at individual building levels to start to address problems.
Vice Chair, I've got three councillors waiting to get in. Vice Chair, Councillor Dykes and Councillor Witts. Thanks,
Chair. The thing I like about this report is it's simple to understand, and the simpler the better as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you can see where the actions are in each of the different areas that we've actually had audits in, and the measure, you can measure exactly what the outcome of those are. I mean, if you look at the 3.3, for instance, there were 37 internal audit recommendations due for completion by the end of October, 35, which is 95% were addressed. It's really a good news story in that at least people who are getting actions from the Audit and Risk Committee are actually following those and completing those to time. Yes, there are two, and there's already actions in there to address those particular things. But I think it's quite a good news story that certainly for one that I can follow the report and I can understand where the actions are and looking at that. So I think it's a really good report, and I recommend, just again coming back to what Kevin does with this report, to thank him for it.
Amen to that. Jill?
Thank you. It was just on the schools PPP contract management. I just wanted somebody to give me just an update. Obviously, item 3 on page 45 is an August 13 completion date, and I know that things are moving on with that, but I just wanted an update as to where we are. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. Things have moved on. The structure, a person has now been appointed within the structure. The posts are being advertised. They will be being put in place hopefully over the next couple of weeks, month at the maximum. The contract, not renegotiation, but looking at all the CNOCs and the IOCs that have happened to the contract, it's all being pulled together, and I anticipate that the contract will be at steady state as promised at the 31st of March 2014. I think that answers the member's question.
Thank you very much for that. It does. Clarity. Thank you.
We'll forgive Mr Haswell his presumption. Councillor Witts, Alistair.
Thanks, Chair. Please indulge me and inform me as to what it's meant on page 44, audit recommendation 4, end of day. And I know it's not going to be as esoteric as one way. I've hoped it would be a SCUBA report, certainly not in the Solway in October. So what does SCUBA mean, please?
Kevin?
Thank you, Chair. It is an acronym, but I couldn't tell you what it stands for. It's the Financial Receipting and Management Information System used by Sport and Leisure. So they use it. It's quite a complex piece of software, quite involved, but it allows them to, it runs their tills So any financial transactions taken through their tills are then recorded as management information. It also allows bookings. So at DG1, where space is being booked and so on, you can actually do ticket sales and that sort of stuff through it. It's quite a good system. It's a well-established and well-known system used at a national level. The difficulty we had specifically on the VAT issue, which is identified here, what had happened was when the new financial ledger system was introduced, VAT coding, the codes had to be changed in SCUBA, the ledger codes to which income was to be posted all had to be changed, and the system at some point reset the VAT values, so they were all being reported at the wrong level. So this involved this created an error in our VAT return to HMRC, which the audit discovered. So as a precaution, in case that ever were to happen again, although we only change our financial ledger systems about once every 10 years, so it's a remote prospect, but we were suggesting that a daily check be carried out between the SCUBA system and what's called the e-return, what's going into the council system. That proved a bit intractable. I was surprised at how intractable it turned out to be, but that's now been solved. So the scope or the opportunity to do this VAT check on a daily basis is now in place. And so that's why that recommendation in particular took rather a long time to deliver, but it's been done now.
Could you run that by me again? Financial, what did you say? Sorry. It's short for financial.
Oh, SCUBA, don't know. I can't tell you.
It's a financial system used in swimming pools.
And that must be the most excruciating joke that's been cracked thus far. Okay, right. Councillor Witts, you're provoking hilarity here. Thanks, you're welcome. Right, no other members, any other comments to make? Can we go to the recommendations? You'll see, in fact, that we're being asked to note and comment on the progress made in implementing the internal audit recommendations as detailed in the appendix. And if you go to paragraph 3.6, you'll see there are various bullet points. I take it we have satisfied ourselves that the key internal control issues are being appropriately addressed by management. As Vice Chair has said, 35 of the 37 implemented within the agreed timescales. That's a good return rate as far as I'm concerned. Secondly, to consider whether the correct balance has been struck between the costs of control and the risks faced. Well, I presume that we would be of the view that that is indeed the case. And thirdly, to form a view on the effectiveness of the internal audit's work. I think we would take the view that this has been an effective piece of work, and indeed has already been, as has been suggested, we should place on record our appreciation of Kevin and his staff for the work they've carried out in this connection. So, on that basis, I take it that's the findings of the committee. Okay, thank you. Moving on then to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 9. This is the 6 months progress report against the 2013-14 internal audit plan. The audit team, as some members of the committee will know better than I do, being an Arif East, that the audit team operates to a plan agreed at the beginning of each financial year. The current year's plan was approved by this committee at its meeting on the 9th of April this year. The committee agreed to receive interim position reports at 6 monthly and 9 monthly intervals, in addition to the outturn report at the end of year. This report is the 6 monthly report and provides details and information about the progress being made by Internal Audit Service against its targets. The actual time spent on audit work during the first half of the year is listed in the appendix to the report, along with the annual planned times and the remaining balance available. Work completed to date has related to the agreed support to external audit, as well as progress made in other areas of the plan. Mr. Garrett is the author of the report. He'll be presenting it to committee and answering any questions. Kevin, do you have any further comments to make at this stage, sir? Okay, thank you. Colleagues, any comments? Vice Chair?
Yeah, it's just a question more than anything else, Kevin. Are you happy with the amount of time that and resource that you've got to complete the audit timescale for the next 6 months?
Yes, Chair. There is flexibility in the plan. It's deliberately put in there because in the past where I've worked, every second of an audit team's time is planned, and then you have a constant stream of variations having to come forward. So there is some jiggle room in the plan which is built in, and it's designed to create the flexibility that I think we need to have to respond to ongoing situations. In terms of the plan overall, the question I think is very appropriate. Can we deliver the plan? At this point in time, the answer is yes. There is some pressure on our creditor payments provision. We put, in effect, we're doing 3 jobs under that category, and I'm reporting that due to overruns on the first stage, the first part of the project, there will be some pressure on that time. I think that budget is likely to be bust. We have two ways of dealing with that. That's either to raid some time from other work, or to look at deferring one of the 3 projects we were looking to do to next year. I'll come back at the next meeting. We'll come to a conclusion depending how other things are going. We'll come back to the next committee, or the next reporting cycle, and ask members if it's appropriate to agree an adjustment to the plan. But yes, I mean, we're in good heart, actually. We're making quite good progress on most fronts, and we are very satisfied at 6 months that we're in a good position. And other than that one thing, there isn't an immediate pressure that we've identified on our time.
Wish to come back, Alicia? No? Any other member? Councillor McKee?
Just can I ask what the 2 unplanned audit interventions were that arose during the first 6 months?
Yes, Chair. Whithorn Trust and Aldgirth Community Council, I won't go into details, but a number of years ago we carried out some financial governance audits which were reported in connection with third sector funded bodies. They really were designed to help the organisation become fit for purpose and meet some of the council's expectations, as well as give the council information about how they were doing and whether or not they had appropriate governance arrangements in place. We did a programme where, over 3 or 4 years, we felt we'd contributed sufficiently to the following the public pound remit, so we concluded that work. But we always said, if necessary, we'll come in support on one of these type organisations if necessary. And that occurred earlier this year. We were asked to provide information for internal purposes on the finances of the Whithorn Trust, which I'm sure members are aware of, has been reporting financial difficulties. And they've been making representations to the council about additional funding, seeking additional funding. So we had a look at their books basically and established their financial position and reported that internally. So that's what that work was about. The Aldgirth Community Council is a difficult area. However, the council has an interest in that some of the money it gave for the Aldgirth Gala has wound up in a slightly unusual place, and we're seeking accountability for that. That's what we're doing. But we are making quite good progress actually with the parties. So we hope to, without a lot more work, be in a position of giving a good news story on that one soon.
No further comments or questions? Okay. Can I suggest then that not only do we note the progress being made, but having heard, having considered the report and having heard Kevin's responses, we note and approve thus far the progress being made. I think there's no harm to place on record our approval or appreciation in appropriate circumstances. So I would amend that slightly and say note and approve thus far the progress being made towards the completion of the internal audit plan. And then moving on to item number 10. This is a report pertaining to the membership of the Joint Safety Committee. It's a report by the Director of Chief Executive Service. Members are asked to review the Council representation on the Joint Safety Committee, which has been formed to comply with the trade union request under the Safety Representatives and Safety Committee Regulations of 1977 as amended. Mr Haswell, do you have anything further to add to the report?
No, Chairman.
And can I welcome Sue White, Principal Health and Safety Advisor, to the meeting. Sue's here to answer any specific questions that members may wish to put or wish to have. Councillor Witts.
Thank you, Chair. On page 61, paragraph 6, it says meetings shall be held 4 times each year. I am a member of this Joint Safety Committee. The meeting of September the 5th was postponed due to the unavailability of say junior members and I believe some officials. This year, the meetings have been held, 2 meetings have been held, one on the 21st of January and one on the 2nd of May. I delved deeper and unearthed the minutes of the 21st of January, and I discovered that it noted that the minute of the meeting, the previous meeting to the 21st of January, was the 28th of February 2012. This means that in 2012 only one meeting was held. This year, I suppose it's progress, we've held 2 meetings, which is 100% improvement. Nevertheless, the recommendation is that we should hold 4 meetings per year. I think we should look carefully at this slippage.
Yes, I think the point is well taken. Do you wish to respond to that, Sue, please?
This year, accepted last year, the meetings weren't held. This year, 4 were programmed in, and another one is programmed in for December. So there should be the 3 held this year. The reason that the 3rd one wasn't, it was the chair and the vice chair, so it was out of our control as far as the council were concerned. It was the actual union's chair and vice chair jointly on holiday. It wasn't that we didn't meet the requirements to consult with a joint safety committee, but accepted about last year that there was obviously, that we didn't meet that.
Do you wish to come in, Mr Hazel, before I bring in the Vice Chair?
Thanks, Chairman. I think the bottom line is that Councillor Witts has made a very valid point. We refreshed, I hate that word, but we did. We refreshed the membership as Joint Safety Committee in 2012 with the very intention of ensuring that it met its statutory obligations and that meetings were held. For various unfortunate reasons, a meeting wasn't held in September. We will have 4 meetings before the end of December.
That's helpful, that's reassuring. Vice Chair?
Thanks, Chair. Just coming back to the report for a minute. Obviously, Jack Groom has left the Audit and Risk Committee, and it's for this particular reason that we've got this membership of the Joint Safety Committee in place. And I think option 1 is nominate a replacement for the vacancy should actually happen. And I would suggest, Chair, that you and I have got a very important role in this particular Health and Safety Committee, and I would like to nominate yourself to replace that. But I would also like to come back on the actual Health and Safety Committee meetings, in that if there is for any reason a deferral or postponement, then it's quite quickly redone, a new date put in place, and perhaps within the following 2 weeks or a month that we actually have that meeting.
On this occasion, this year in September, it was just basically the non-availability of trying to rearrange it with rooms availability. We did try, unfortunately, on this one.
That's appreciated, Sue. Thank you. Can I say for the record that I would be pleased to accept a nomination to the vacancy created by Councillor Groom's stead, if that's acceptable to members of the committee. And on that basis, I presume that you'd wish to retain the existing representation then. Okay, thanks very much indeed. Any other members, any points they wish to make?
Quite happy to second Councillor Dryburgh's nomination, Chair.
Okay, right, thank you. And that, as far as I'm aware, concludes that. Sorry, a big pardon, forgive me, Jill.
Sorry, no, I was just waiting for you to move on to any other business. I wanted to ask a question.
Sorry?
I was just waiting for you to move on to that you had any other business, basically.
Well, do you want me to quit the chair before you get to ask your question? Seriously, that does conclude the business of the meeting today. I don't have any other business or details of any other business which is deemed urgent and which needs a decision as a consequence. I would thank members for their attendance and, more importantly, for their participation. In these exceptional circumstances, you wish to ask a question, do you want to flag it up, and we'll see what the response should. I know what the response should be, but we'll endeavour. And I'm not starting a process which will be founded on in the future. What's the issue?
I appreciate that. I just wondered if I could ask a question about ongoing training, but I can do that offline if you'd prefer.
That would be preferable, because we'll have some developments to report following up on the meetings that Archie and I have had with Kevin and Alex. Thank you. Thanks to you all, as I say, for your attendance and your participation.